Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Raskin, and I'm your presenter today for this webinar on communicating effectively with difficult communication styles. Now, the reason we're doing this today is because it really makes our lives much easier when we can communicate effectively. And there are going to be those difficult people in the workplace, but we can increase productivity and efficiency, create win-win situations, which is the goal in doing this work. But first we want to look at those styles that sometimes get in the way. All right, so let's first take a look at who they are. So we've got four types of communication styles here. We've got the aggressives, the passive aggressives, and the assertives. So what I want you to do is just think about those words and put in the chat room, which of those do you feel you encounter the most? Just think about them. Just put your answers in the chat room. Someone said aggressive, passive aggressives. Okay, I'm getting passive aggressives. They're tricky, all right? Assertives, okay. A lot of assertives, which is good because if you're with an assertive person, then you can create the win-win easier. So we're going to unpack each of these. So let's look at the first one, the aggressives. Now, the aggressives are in your face. The positive thing about the aggressive, believe it or not, is you know where they stand, but they get very upset and very loud. They're loud and demanding voice. They blame and criticize, intimidate and threaten. They issue commands. They ask questions rudely, and they just fail to listen to others. And so their mantra is, I always get my way, and you're the one to blame. And these personalities that I'm going to mention have been created by Dr. Robert Bramson, who wrote the book, How to Cope with Difficult People. And I love his terminology. So those Sherman tanks just try to run over you. They'll listen, but they're very strong. They're different from the exploder who just explodes in your face, which can be a little threatening. And then we've got the snipers that kind of sideswipe you and make those comments like, glad you could make it, ha ha ha, when you're late. And then you've got those know-it-all experts. And, those are the ones that just know it all. So you have to know your facts. And the balloons really don't know it all. So you want to help them save face if you can. But the idea is, how do we work with these aggressive behaviors? Number one, you don't want to argue with them. You want to stand up to them without fighting. You want to state your opinion firmly. You definitely want to soften your tone and give them positive feedback in public, but the criticism happens in the private, because otherwise, if you criticize them in public, you may get another exploder or you may have another Sherman tank response. So I want you to think about someone you know who's aggressive. And I want you to look at these four. And I want you to put into this next piece, just write down the initials of that person. Okay. And when you write the initials down, think about how you would handle these people. What has worked for you, or what do you think would work for you? Don't argue, stand up with them, state your opinion, soften your tone, give positive feedback in public, and criticism in private. What do you think?
For me, it's soften your tone.
Okay. All right, someone else. Someone wrote in the chat room.
Do positive feedback in public and then criticize them or address the situation in private.
Right, good. So that they can possibly listen to you. And then state your opinion firmly so they can better understand you. Okay. All right, good. Okay, let's move on and talk about another personality. Next are the passive behaviors. Now, the passive behaviors are interesting. You often think they're easy because they're super agreeables. And many times they're the ones that just say, oh, yes, of course, and they do nothing. They don't express their feelings or their needs. They avoid confrontation. They have an inability to say no, and they go with the flow and they follow others. Their whole piece is really doesn't matter that much. I don't want to rock the boat. Now you can actually work with the passives. And the reason you can is because they want to be liked. So give them more positive feedback to boost their self-esteem. Give them a special task that they would like. Make a note of their opinion and their suggestions. All right, so now I want to take a look at this and have you give your opinion. Think of someone you know who just, they tell you yes all the time or they smile, but they don't follow through. How would you handle this, or how have you handled it? Give more positive feedback, give them a special task, make a note of their opinion. Please put your answers into the chat room or just unmute yourself and share. Okay. Someone just wrote, provide more positive feedback. All right, someone else.
I have
Making a
to
note
agree.
of their opinion, I think, is important.
I agree.
Because when you make a note of their opinion, right, then you are making them feel better and they feel included.
Right? They feel heard.
Great. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about another style. This one isn't quite so easy. Okay, this is the passive aggressive. They're not the aggressive that are in your face, and they're not totally passive. They appear passive on the surface. They feel powerless and stuck. They build resentment. They use silent treatment. They spread rumors. They sabotage others, and they can appear cooperative, but often they do the opposite. So they'll say things like, I'm okay with it, but it may not be okay with others, or I can do it your way. But they say it in a tone that doesn't sound like they're going to do it. They don't say, oh, I can do it your way. They say, I can do it your way, but they really don't agree. And again, Bramson has coined these people as negativists, indecisive stallers. Maybe they stall because they're perfectionists and they just don't want to do it. Then you're complainers, and you're silent and unresponsive. They're the ones that give you the yep and nope. All right, so how do you handle them? Be direct, honest, and decisive. Point out contradictory behaviors. Document their behavior and assignments. And you do this with passive behaviors as well. Define tasks in simple terms and assign them that way. And give them those tasks in small chunks and expectations and timelines. So I want you to think of someone who's passive aggressive. And again, we can go back and take a look at, are they a negativist, a complainer, an indecisive staller? Are they just silent and unresponsive? And just put their initials in where you think about that person. Which of these behaviors do you think would work with that person for you or have worked with you? Honest and direct, pointing out contradictory behaviors, documenting their behavior and assignments, defining tasks in a simple way and assigning them that way, giving them assignments in small chunks with expectations and timelines. What do you think? Just put your answers in the chat room.
For me, that last one is important because you're not sure where they're coming from. So if you set the expectations and timelines, you'll know if they're with you or not, if they do
Good.
it or not.
All right. Someone
And
else.
defining that in very simple words so that there's no misunderstanding about what's expected, I think can also help.
Good. And also being direct with them so they can see what they're doing that's wrong. And this was in the chat. All of those are really important. And you can do them in any particular order or more than one if needed. Thank you. All right. Now let's take a look at what we really want here in terms of, where's the win-win? The assertive behaviors. They express their own needs and consider needs of others. They're honest and direct and diplomatic. They aim for both sides to win. They use I statements. So it's about I feel rather than look what you did. They own their mistakes. They trust other people and they see the positive in others. And they'll say things like, we can share our opinions and feelings honestly and respectfully with each other. And I'm glad we had this conversation. Okay, so now those are the ways that we handle this. So I want you to think of people you work with who are assertive, where you are creating win-wins. Which of these work for you? There may be several, and anyone can unmute and share or just put your answers in the chat room. What do you think? The people where you've been able to create the win-wins.
Aims for both sides.
Aims for those. Anyone else?
Trusting is big in communication. So trusting other people, being
Okay.
positive.
Anyone else want to unmute and share? Yeah, trusting other people is important because when you have that trust, people will open. Anyone else? Or just put your answer in the chat room. And I got also using I statements and being honest and direct and diplomatic. So what we've looked at today, and this is what you're going for, that win-win. We've looked at these 4 different types of behaviors. We've looked at aggressives, we've looked at passives, we've looked at passive aggressives, and we've looked at assertives. And again, I mean, these communication styles are difficult, but if we know how to handle them, we can move toward the assertive behavior, which then can create win-wins. We can't always, but this is the goal. All right, everyone, any questions or comments? Anyone have a comment you'd like to make or a question?
Thank you. This was very helpful.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for attending today's presentation on communicating effectively with difficult communication styles. I'm Patricia Raskin.